Everybody, and welcome to today's Friday Live on this Friday, July 18th, 2025. I know it's Thursday for some of you in the US and Canada, or no, for all of you in the US and Canada who are tuning in. I am coming to you live right now from Facebook and YouTube. And as always, I will be answering any questions that you have and obviously reflecting on the week that was with my clients and students and the other things that I'm up to this week. So there's a couple of things I want to share with you around that. A couple of a new program I'm about to release, and love to get your feedback and thoughts on that. And of course, anyone who is just tuning in live, feel free to say hi, let me know where you're listening from, all of that stuff. I love to know where people are listening from in the world. And if you do have a question, just pop it in the comments below and I will do my best to answer it. So I'm currently live with you on Facebook and YouTube. So it's been an interesting week this week for a number of reasons. Lots of laughter, actually. There's been a lot of humor. And, you know, that's where I'm just trying to see if I've got a copy of it here. Actually, it's on my shelf. I'll grab it in a sec. That's where my, I talk about my book, Funny Little Human. It really did the idea for that, the title for that came from those really humorous interactions that I have with my relatable students. And, you know, we certainly had some very funny ones this week. Last Wednesday's call was hilarious. Along with there being a lot of profound wisdom that came through, as there always does. But you know, there was a lot of laughter. I think people are always amazed at how you can be learning something that's life-changing and having such an enormous impact on your life, the quality of your life, your relationships, and also have a really good time at the same time. I think we tend to see working on yourself, so to speak. I don't see this as working on myself. I'm just learning something that just lightens my mental load and changes everything in my life. But, you know, we tend to associate working with ourselves as something that's emotionally difficult, very, very hard to move through. And we don't normally associate the word fun with working on yourself or learning something, right? We don't. But I've got to say, we had so much fun on the call on Wednesday. Lots of laughter. Hi, Faye. Good morning, honey. Thank you for saying hi. And hello, Jody. Hi, lovely. It's so nice to see you too. Thanks for saying hi. Appreciate that. And anyone else out there who may be listening and wants to say hi. So, you know, I find it I've found it hilarious that we could have so much laughter yet have such a profound experience that creates so many shifts. And that is what really came through on the calls the calls that I run with my relatable students. I run 2 a week. And that's why I wrote the book, Funny Little Human. And that's where the title came from, Funny Little Human, because we talk about this a lot on these calls. Like, my funny little human was, you know, going through a really judgmental state of mind yesterday. And because of that, it did ABC. And that might sound strange to you, but it's actually it's amazing when you can associate to yourself in that way, because it gives you such an incredibly empowering way to navigate your emotional state and the emotional state of somebody else. And when we feel empowered emotionally, we communicate better, we are calmer, we listen more deeply. There's just so much more bandwidth for anything and everything that comes our way. I can't tell you the ripple effect of that. Hi, Beat Crazy Band. Hey, Beat Crazy Band. Thanks for saying hi. I can see you're on YouTube and you're from Wollongong. All right, beautiful. Love it. Appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. Wollongong is in Australia, for those of you who might be overseas and not sure where it is, but not too far from me, a few hours away, but not too far. Thanks for saying hi. Appreciate that. If you've got any questions, pop them in the comments below. So I'm just talking about how we tend to associate any kind of change, especially emotional change or anything to do with relationships, as something that's not fun, that it's hard and difficult. And, you know, that has definitely been the theme this week. I've been working with this lovely couple who from Canada, actually, and they were saying to me just this week. We cannot believe how easy this is. We cannot believe, and we've learned so many complicated, difficult things. Been to in therapy and in a lot of counselling for many years, and they are just astounded at how easy it is, how much easier they're finding everything, and the incredibly profound impact that is having on their connection, how they show up to each other, how they're moving forward, how hopeful they feel on every level. And I said to them, I said, can you see? And they said 100%. I said, can you see when I say relationships are effortless and easy? Can you see the truth in that? And they said, absolutely, Fiona. I wouldn't have believed it beforehand, but we can. Relationships are easy and effortless. This is true. Because I said a lot of people attack me for that statement and say it's not true. There's kind of this belief out there that that we've all been conditioned to believe that relationships are hard and they require a lot of work. Okay. Now, when you're holding that in your energy field, that relationships are hard and they require a lot of work, when you're holding that in your energy field, then that's exactly what your reality will be. Whatever we hold in our energy field is what our reality becomes. It's just, that is a fact of life, right? And this has been proven by scientists. I'm not just saying something woo-woo that it doesn't have any merit or value. It's that is just true. And when we hold something like that in our energy field, every time there is a disagreement or a difference of opinion or a miscommunication, we bring that to that issue, right? And so the issue just becomes bigger and harder and more difficult than it actually is. And so I just love the fact whenever I'm working with, whether it's with my students in Relatable or one-on-one with a couple or whoever or whomever, and they start to see it, that it is that through the lens of the understanding that I teach, relationships, life, difficult situations can become easy and effortless. It is true that you can actually live from that space. And I just think that is just, to me, priceless and the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I really do. Because especially I think for me, I used to see life as quite hard and difficult and that I was unlucky. That's kind of how I grew up. And so, of course, without understanding it, that was my reality. I didn't realize I was innocently creating that reality, but it was. And, of course, that is not my reality at all anymore. And I'm just beyond grateful for that. I really am. Hey, Michelle. Oh, you're in Lake Proserpine, Queensland. Wow. Shorts and a T-shirt. It's 25 degrees. Oh, my goodness. It's the middle of winter here in Melbourne, although I got to say it's a really beautiful picture blue sunny day today, so I can't complain. But shorts and a T-shirt at 25 degrees in the middle of Queensland in the middle of winter sounds pretty good to me. I think you're on par with the temperature in the UK right now, and they're in the middle of their summer. Oh, it's so hilarious. Okay, so I'm going to get to the questions that have been sent through. And, of course, if anyone else wants to say hi or they've got a question for me, just pop it in the comments below and I will absolutely do my best to answer it for you. Okay. Hi, Fiona. I have a question for your Q&A, please. How does a couple with diametrically opposed attitudes to money navigate retirement amicably? My relationship with my husband is impacted significantly by our attitudes towards money. We've been married for 46 years and always pooled our finances. I've always been the money manager and he has never shown any interest or had any involvement in our finances beyond working in self-employment. It's a problem that's keeping me stuck in a responsible job at almost 70 years old because I'm concerned that our limited cash reserves will be depleted very quickly if I stop work. My husband is almost fully retired and I'm now the breadwinner. He seems to avoid conversations about budgeting and also the need to liquidate some significant assets to have some choices in our retirement. It's true to say that I've always worried about money while he never has. So at opposite ends of the financial spectrum. I'd be keen to hear your thoughts on this issue, which I'm well and truly stuck on. Okay. First of all, I'm really sorry that you're going through that and that, you're feeling at 70, because I can imagine that, at almost 70 years old that you'd like to retire. And, this is a problem for so many people. My parents' generation retired much younger than what I think my generation, your generation will. I think many of us will be working until we're in our 60s and up to and past 70 because the cost of living is just so much higher for people, and there's just been such a rapid increase in housing and all sorts of things. So, but I hear what you're saying, that you and your husband, it's not something that you've been able to talk about. I guess without knowing a lot more about this, I can only make some assumptions here. But, if you've been the person handling the money and you're the one, making all the decisions, obviously I'm going to guess that maybe he's not as educated as you around finances, around, he's not used to thinking ahead to, okay, what do we do if I stop work and this and this and this happens? I think, and if he's not willing to have conversations around liquidating assets to give you some choices, I guess there's a couple of things. Number one, I always say to people, if you're going to have these conversations, or conversations that have traditionally been difficult in the past, then Alison, hi Fiona, this is Alison from Wollongong, and Best Crazy Band is my ex-husband. Okay, I love it. That's awesome. Okay. I love the synchronicities and the connections in life. Okay, cool. Well, how awesome that your ex-husband's willing to listen to our live. That's really super cool. So I was going to say, in regards to this, because I know that for a lot of people, this can be applied to parenting issues. Obviously, looking at things differently from a financial perspective, but really from anything. Okay, if you're finding that, I always say to people, when it comes to having a conversation with someone where they're on a different page to you, number one, when you bring the conversation up, make sure that you are in a neutral state of mind. Most of us approach these conversations, especially if there's been difficulties around it in the past, and we're very loaded, okay? And so when I say we're very loaded, we come into the conversation with a lot on it energetically. The other person can feel it and they shut down. And so it's a matter of, and I've seen the power of this through my students and clients. You've got to be able to show up to something like this neutrally, without anything on it, without like needing there to be an outcome, without saying, okay, we're going to work this out today, without frustration, without resentment, without that sense of, you never want to do this, all of that kind of what I call loadedness, all right? Because even if you're not saying it, it's in your energy. Remember, our energy enters the room before we do. And our energy is our biggest blind spot for people. It is such a huge blind spot for people. And so I've had that many people come to me who'll say, I'm neutral, and then we'll start talking about something and I'm like, you aren't as neutral as you think you are. Or people who'll say, I'm really calm, and then they'll start learning this understanding and they'll be like, whoa, I am nowhere near as calm as I thought I was. So it's really important that you approach the conversation from a place of neutrality. And if they're not willing to talk about it, that, one of the things that's important to say is, well, let me know when you are. Like, this is a conversation that we can't avoid anymore. So let me know when it's going to be a good time to talk to you about it. I'm not here to make you wrong, but we do need to make some decisions. The other thing that I would also say is, you can also come at this from a different direction, in terms of really sitting down with your husband and saying, hey, look, are you enjoying retirement? Are you enjoying having your free time? I want that too. And I don't feel that I can retire. I'm feeling burdened by this because we're not having this conversation. Wouldn't you like me for us to be able to have some fun together and enjoy our retirement, and see whether that's a tact that would help? And the other thing is that maybe if it's a conversation that's too difficult for the two of you, or you feel like it's going to go south really quickly, or that's what tends to happen, is that you bring an impartial third party in. So that might be a financial planner or someone where you sit down and you work these things out and you start making some decisions about your financial future, right? So the first thing is, make sure you show up in a neutral frame of mind. Now, in order to do that, you have to really know what a neutral frame of mind feels like for you. And a lot of people don't know that. And then if the other person isn't ready to talk about it, just say to them, okay, can we make a time to talk about it? Like tomorrow, can we do it tomorrow? You've got some time to think about it, but it's really important to me that we make some decisions, because this is weighing heavily on my mind. And this is a burden that I'm carrying, and I'm just not prepared to carry anymore. And then if someone's not prepared to talk about it, say, look, I'm going to bring in a third party so that we can sit down and make some decisions, because this is something that I can't put off any longer. All right. And it's obviously something that you find challenging. So I'm going to find a third party, someone that we can have a conversation with about this, so that we can make some financial decisions and set ourselves up in the best way possible for our retirement. But you showing up calm, you showing up neutral, and then if they say, I'm not ready to talk about it, just say, that's fine, but let's make a time now where we actually do have this conversation. Daniel, I think sometimes we don't necessarily know when our energy is off, but appreciate it may be. Is it okay to check with the other person whether they feel our energy is off? Yeah, sure. That's right. Yeah, you can. I think as well, that's why in conversations like this, if you bring curiosity instead of resentment, and this is something people struggle with the most, because in order to bring curiosity, you have to know how to get over yourself, right? And people are terrible at it. Like they just are. I was terrible at it. It's something we struggle with because we have an ego and we get caught up in the past and we bring evidence from the past into a conversation, and then we use that to justify our position, and people struggle to get over themselves, right? And an example of that might be, I'm just going to use this question as an example, but an example of that might be, you sit down, you go to have the conversation, the other person's not really receptive, and then all of a sudden you go south really quickly because you start thinking, this is just so typical. I've had to carry the burden of our financial situation my whole life. I'm nearly 70. I'm so over it. I knew this would happen. This is just blah, 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 right? And in that second, you become really loaded. And so it's a matter of learning how to hold space. And to me, I think this is one of the greatest life skills we can ever learn. This is everything that I teach, all of this stuff in Relatable, so that you don't lose your way in a conversation. You don't do that. You're actually able to stay there, stay neutral, hold space, be present, listen, and have that conversation. Now, people who are able to do that, it is incredible the impact that it has on our relationships and the people around us. But I got to say, very few people are actually able to do that. And that's just because, we get caught up in everything that's happened in the past. We believe every thought in our head. Our emotions take over, and, we get really stuck, which is why learning the way thought works, learning how to navigate your emotions well, having a completely different understanding of how human beings work, gives you the space, capacity, and bandwidth, right, to be able to do that, to show up from a place of neutrality and curiosity, even over the most triggering of things. This is what people discover. And I love it when one of my students or clients sees that, because they're amazed. They're like, oh my goodness, Fiona, normally I'd fly off the handle over something like that. I can't believe how calm I feel, like really calm. I can't believe how much easier I'm showing up to this conversation, or I'm able to hold space. That I would never have been able to do that before. And I love that, because people are genuinely seeing that they can do it. And that has its own ripple effects, right? You feel proud of yourself. You feel good about you. And people who feel proud of themselves and feel good about themselves are a lot more generous emotionally. We're a lot more emotionally generous with ourselves and others when we're in that state of mind. It's really quite incredible. And so from there, we're less stingy, because people can get really stingy when they feel justified, okay? We're more curious. We listen differently. We communicate well. I could go on and on with this, right? So, So, hey, Robert, don't show up loaded. Great point. Thanks, Robert. I appreciate that. Hi, Ian. New retiree here. An impartial third party can work well. Yeah, absolutely, it can. Right? Nothing wrong with that. You just got to sit down sometimes and think about what works best for you. What would work best for you? Right? And sometimes we find that difficult because we're so caught up in the resentment and frustration of the fact that a situation is a certain way and it's not the way we would like it to be. Right? Hey, Graham, fly off the handle. Never did that. Hi, Fee. No, never. None of us have ever flown off the handle ever in our lives, have we? No, we're always so calm and collected. Okay, so next question. Let me just have a look here. There's a few questions here, so I've just got to go. Hi, Fiona. I've been following you for a while and I find your Facebook Lives really helpful. And many of the things that you say have helped me so much. Okay, but my question is, why do I keep shutting down in arguments even when I want to stay connected? Great question, right? Great question. Why do I keep shutting down in arguments even when I want to stay connected? Anyone relate to that one? I'm sure there's many of you that can relate to either being in an argument with someone who shuts down, or you're the one who shuts down and you kind of know that that's not helpful, but you do it anyway. We can all relate to that, doing something that we know is not helpful and we do it anyway. When we want to stay connected, but we fly off the handle, or we want to stay connected and we shut down, right? And that's a really great question. And look, there's a number of reasons, all right? Obviously, for many of us, this is something that we've learned from childhood, from the models that we had in our lives. We learn that kind of stuff, that it's not safe and that it's easier to go inwards. You know, there's you see this with a lot of people, right? And really, when we learn that it's not emotionally safe to speak our truth, we can kind of go one of two ways. We either go in or we go out, right? So we go in because it's a self-protective measure, or we go out because it's a self-protective measure. Getting angry is a form of self-protection. Going inward is a form of self-protection, right? And so we've either learnt one or the other growing up. However, to me, that's not where the juice lies in the answer to this question. That's the stuff that you might all go, I kind of know that, but it doesn't really help me in this moment of now, right? But to me, when I say the juice in the answer to a question, I'm talking about the stuff that actually helps you in a moment of now, right? And because when you're, hang on, my husband's calling me and I haven't switched my phone off. My apologies, guys. When you're in a moment of now, that's when you want the leverage, okay, to be able to show up differently. And I guess the easiest answer I can give you to that, in the very short time that we have, is because, in an argument, when we don't understand, or when there's conflict or there's a difference of opinion, when we don't understand the way things work, this is why understanding the way things work is so, so, so important. I cannot tell you how important this is. When we don't understand the way things work, we look in the wrong place for the answer. Okay, we look in the wrong place for the answer. It's like, let's just say a plumber comes to your house because the kitchen sink is blocked, and he turns the power off because he wants to see if the blockage is in the electrical wiring. Like, that's what I mean by we just look in completely the wrong place when we don't understand the way things work. And so we look in the wrong place by going back into the past automatically in our heads, or looking out here, looking at something, someone, and going, I can't help it because, right? We kind of look in those two places. And, when you look in those two places, you will revert back to whatever your default position is. So remember I said just before that, when someone's either shutting down or getting angry, it's a kind of a form of self-protection, right? Getting angry is a wall of protection. Shutting down is a wall of protection. And they become your default, right? And that's stuff that you learn in childhood and all that kind of jazz. But the magic doesn't lie there. The magic lies in understanding in what's going on in a moment of now, so that you don't revert to your default, okay? And it's so easy to revert to your default when you're looking in the wrong place for the answer. And this is what I find all the time. People look in the wrong place. They then revert to default type thinking and default type emotions. And so when you have default thinking and default emotions, they just take over, and then you do what you've always done, right? So, when you have a different understanding of how things work, so when I say how things work, how human beings work, all of a sudden your default does not make as much sense to you. And that is what I find to be so cool. So super, super cool, right? Your default does not make as much sense to you. Now, when something doesn't make as much sense to you, you kind of, you stop doing it. My default was anger. My default was to get reactive. That was what I grew up in, right? That was what I was modeled. But as I started to learn this, I remember this, and it was so freeing, is that I would go to get angry about something, but it just didn't make sense to me anymore. And I was like, oh, wow, this is super cool. This is really cool. Now, when something doesn't make sense to you, what happens is you get the gift of choice. You get the capacity to start to choose something else. And as you start to choose something else, you create a new default. And so all of a sudden, your default isn't shut down anymore. Your default isn't anger anymore. Your default starts to become something else. And as you learn how things work, you start to become more empowered about creating a new default for yourself. You become more empowered about choosing that. And it starts to make more and more sense. And as you experience that more, you want more of it because it just feels good. Because human beings are naturally drawn to the things that feel good. And so when you start to realize that thing doesn't feel good, like shutting down, getting angry, and you really see it in a moment of now and you see what else is possible, all of a sudden that default behavior starts to change. And I see this in people who have had default behavior for decades, and it has started to change because it just doesn't make as much sense. I would have described myself as a stress head, and I would have said, if someone had said to me, Fiona, how would you describe yourself once upon a time? I would have said, I'm someone who doesn't deal with stress well. I no longer believe that to be true at all. That's just not even remotely true. And that is because of this understanding. I've created a new default for myself. I don't revert to anger anymore. I don't revert to the same level of overwhelm that I used to. And when I was overwhelmed, I'd get angry. And it's just a whole new reality that I get to create over and over and over again. And, to me, that's why I can genuinely, honestly, hand over heart say, having this understanding in my life and living from this place is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. And why it's such an honor and a privilege to teach it, because I get to share that with my students, with my clients, and people start to see that, relationships are nowhere near as hard as we've been conditioned to believe they are. Other people's, other people, and you are not at the mercy of other people's behavior or reactions. Imagine deeply knowing that to your core, that you're not at the mercy of someone else's reactions or emotional reactions or behavior. I want you to take a moment and just imagine what your life would be like if you knew that to the depth of your being, that you are not governed by someone else's reactions, emotional reactions or behavior. Just imagine what that would open up in your life. Imagine the experiences it would open up in your life. Imagine the emotional freedom that would give you. And to me, emotional freedom is the most valuable thing in my life. Yes, obviously my kids and my husband are very valuable. But I'm talking about from my own experience of life for me, having emotional freedom, knowing I'm not at the mercy of someone else's emotions, situations that are outside of my control, that I can experience emotional freedom around things like that. I mean, I don't think there's anything more priceless in life. And so this is what starts to happen for people when they have this understanding in their life. I'm like, I'm not a stress head. I'm not someone that automatically goes into shutdown because someone else has an opinion or something to say. I now have a lot more choice. Now, I may not be able to see it every single time, right? That's not the point. The point is, once you start to see the choice that you have and you see it in a moment of now, it's something that starts to organically and gradually happen more and more and more in your life, right? This is why many of my relatable students they'll say, because you get access to the program for 12 months and the live calls, and I say, Fiona, I've gone back and I've watched a live call that I've been on, and the difference in my face, in my emotions, in my energy is unbelievable. I don't even relate to the person that was on those calls in the early days. I can see how tense I was, or shut down I was, or how I was holding my jaw. I can see it. Like, it's just completely changed. I'm like, how cool is that? Like, it's just, anyway. Hi, Karen. Hi. Oh, so lovely to see you, Karen. Thank you so much for your comment, honey. I so loved your journey through the Camino. It's on my bucket list. I think that your journey through the Camino was amazing. You shared it so beautifully, Karen, from your heart. You write beautifully, Karen. You really do. I thought it was amazing. Ian, other people's anchor makes me shut down completely. Thanks for this. Okay, well, you're welcome, Ian, and you're not alone in feeling that way. But I really want you to know that if that is something that you want to change, it is possible to change that. The rest of your life does not have to be that. Okay, so I've got time for one more quick question, and then I've got to fly. All right. Hi, Fiona. I'm a bit nervous to ask you this question because I'm worried that I might have to face something in my relationship that I'm not ready to face yet, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Okay, good for you. Why do I feel more alone in my relationship than I did when I was single? Oh, honey, I'm sorry that you feel that way. It's a tough one. And again, you're not alone in feeling that way either. Feeling alone in your relationship. Like, I know there are many people that can relate to that feeling of feeling, even though you're in a relationship, you actually feel quite alone. I know my heart goes out to you and to anyone who's experiencing that. All I will say to that, okay, and there's probably a bigger conversation to be had around this, but in the time that I have, often loneliness, and it's probably a bit of a similar answer to what I've just given, or to what I've just been talking about. And one of the reasons for that is because once you start seeing this understanding play out in your life, you'll realize that everything comes back to the same answer in many ways. And that's what makes it so much simpler to navigate anything and everything. But just in terms of people who are feeling alone or lonely in their relationship, often loneliness, it looks like it comes from someone not giving us what we need and want, right? That again, it looks like it's coming from something out here. But often loneliness, and this is going to be a bit controversial for some of you, but hear me out. Loneliness comes from being caught in a mind that's full of unmet expectations, self-doubt, and disconnection from our own inner wisdom. Okay? When we are disconnected from ourselves, we feel a lot more lonely than people who are connected to themselves. It's really quite incredible, the difference. And so when we have a mind full of unmet expectations, self-doubt, and disconnection from your own inner wisdom, this is where loneliness is generated from. And again, why connecting into that is a big part of my work, because and I know this from my own experience as well. It's very difficult for any of you, right? It's very difficult for any of you, and this is. And I think this is a topic that's becoming more and more acceptable. It used to be like a total, no one can talk about this stuff because you kind of get attacked or shut down. But, I think this is one of the reasons why our younger generation who are entering the workforce are not interested in working so hard. They're like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. I'm not signing up for that, because they're looking for more meaning. They're looking for a deeper level of connection with themselves, with life, with others. And you don't find that through stuff, and you don't find that through slaving away. You don't find it there, right? And I think so many of us are looking for that. If you don't have a connection with your spiritual nature, and we are spiritual beings, we just are. If you don't have a connection with that, it is very difficult for you to have a sense of fulfillment in your life. Now, people who don't feel fulfilled feel very lonely. And loneliness is a feeling of emptiness, right? So when we feel fulfilled, when we feel full, our expectations, and this is 100% true. Try it out for yourself, right? If you don't believe me, try it out for yourself. When you experience inner fulfillment, your expectations of life and others goes down, because you stop looking for it out there. You don't need it out there. You don't need to. You're taking care of that yourself, right? And then from there, people who are fulfilled find it easier to generate connection with others. I find it, they literally just ooze it. And people who ooze connection generate a state of emotional safety naturally, easily, effortlessly. And if you're someone who generates a state of emotional safety easily, effortlessly, you will find people will be drawn to you because they feel safe around you. Most of us are not in touch with ourselves. We're not feeling fulfilled. Our minds are racing, and we're inadvertently not generating emotional safety. And so people don't feel drawn to us or drawn to you, because that's what you're generating. And so, for anyone who's feeling lonely out there, the first place you've got to start is filling yourself up and learning how to do that. And that becomes a win-win. Because number one, you feel better. You feel empowered. And I'm telling you, a person who feels good and feels empowered is so much better at relationships than someone who doesn't feel good and feels disempowered. Right? So much better. Just without doing anything else, they just start doing that really well. So if you're feeling lonely in your relationship, that's why. And so the place you've got to start is with you. And hence why that is a big part of what I teach in Relatable, what I do with my clients. And it is incredibly calming for people. It's so calming. And of course, when we feel calm, we're present. When we're present, a whole new world opens up. A whole new world. Literally, it is a whole new reality. Anyway, I hope that helps everybody. If you want to know more about how can I have more of this stuff in my life, then that is everything that I teach in my Relatable program. Here is the page to that where you can find out more, where you can register. And I put some new testimonials on there, actually, so feel free to have a look through. Honestly, if you know that what I'm saying resonates with you, you can feel that this is something you want to have an experience of. It is never too late, and it is life-changing stuff. Okay, so check out the sales page there, have a read through it, and join us, because we are creating magic. We're creating ripple effects that go across the world, and we are transforming lives through the understanding in this program. And it is an honor and a privilege to share it with you guys. All right, everybody, I will be here next week. Well, at this stage, I will. I'm really toying with doing these fortnightly. So let me know if you would like me to do these weekly or fortnightly. I'd love some feedback. If you've got a question you want to share with me, send it to hello@fionalukis.com.au and I will answer it for you. Thanks so much, Graham. Love you too. Lots of love, everyone. Take care now. Thank you so much, Michelle. Cheers. Ciao.